so when we say foster, we recognize that collaboration and partnerships are critical to our success. We know this is a pretty hefty social purpose commitment, and we can't do this alone. And then when we speak about the world, even though we are BC based, we do recognize we've been around for 26 years. And so how do we utilize our best practices to support other places and countries around the world? When you look at plastic pollution, it's not a regional problem, it's a global one. So we want to play an active role in it. And lastly, when we talk about nothing is waste, it's all about redefining the role of materials and looking at waste as a valuable resource that can be put back into the economy.
Thank you, Belle. Dave, it's going to be a hard one to top that off, but off to you.
As mentioned, my name is Dave Friesen. I'm the president of a company called CG Industrial Specialties. We're a BC-based company, so we started in Vancouver in the Lower Mainland about 41 years ago. And our business is about process valves, and that is a thing. It's a critical thing. Anything that moves through a pipe in the world needs some way to manage that energy. And our company does that. We do that in a diverse number of industries. So in the mining space, oil and gas, pulp and paper, food and beverage, power. So many diverse industries, which takes us quite literally all over the world. And the social purpose we landed on was that we exist to engage the world's industrial leaders to create sustainable solutions, one valve at a time. And like Val, we went through a long and arduous process trying to figure this out. The world's industrial leaders deals with or addresses the fact that we are a diverse company covering many parts of the planet and many different industries. So it's important to understand that we have to engage these people in discussions. The sustainability piece is quite evident, obviously, and speaks to a lot of what Val just mentioned. And then realistically, though, it's one valve at a time. So we are looking at this on a very micro level and then taking it to a macro level from there. That's it.
Amazing. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks.
Mike, over to you.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. So yeah, Mike Schilling. I'm the CEO of Community Savings Credit Union. So as a credit union, we provide banking services that you'll all be familiar with. We provide those to businesses and to individuals. We've been around about 80 years. We started here in the Lower Mainland in BC. And what makes us unique, perhaps, is that we are the largest provider of banking services to labour unions in BC. And those labour unions represent about 600,000 working people across our province, which perhaps brings us on to our social purpose. So our social purpose is that we exist to unite working people to build a just world. And just very briefly, obviously, we talk about working people. That's just ordinary people that everyone on this panel, me, that we see every day. And we bring those people together as a cooperative, as a credit union. And we do that to give access to fair and affordable services and make sure that people can have their money working for them rather than just work for their money.
Amazing. Thank you so much to all three of you. Now, just a quick note to the audience. Now, it's a bit, I would have loved to see you all, but I can't see you all, but I'm speaking to you all. It's an interactive session, and we've got a lot of, as you heard, collective intelligence to come and engage you with. So please utilize the intelligence. If you've got any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box, and I will make sure at the very end to sort of bring those questions up and sort of engage in a dialogue to be able to address them. But as we sort of progress, I mean, creating a social purpose is not probably an easy thing to do, and it takes a lot of time and effort and willingness. So for as all three of you, you're sort of you're a fairly mature state in terms of where you are with your social purpose. What I would love to learn from each of you is what advice would you have for organizations that are a bit in the nascency of understanding and playing with the social purpose idea, on how do you develop a social purpose? So maybe a couple of minutes from each of you, brief answers, just really playing on, tell me what is it that we need to be thinking about as we begin the journey on developing, creating a social purpose. Maybe we'll go in the reverse order. Maybe Mike, we'll start from you now. and then we'll go to Dave and then Bal.
Sure. Thanks, Shiv. And I guess perhaps the best way to put this is that there'll never be a good time to do this. We're all incredibly busy people at work. It's coming up to the holiday season. I don't know about everybody else, but I'm really looking forward to it. But I know how busy the holiday season is, and I'm slightly terrified about that. So there's never a good time to really get into an initiative like this. So my advice would be do it now. And actually, what we found during the pandemic, because we entered into this in the middle of a global pandemic, a crisis that we're all overly familiar with. But actually, what we found was the work that we'd done on developing our social purpose actually gave us a clear competitive advantage during this time of crisis, if you like. As an organisation, we've seen the strongest performance that we've seen in our history during this time. And really, what I put that down to is we had absolute clarity of who we were and what we were here to do, and that made decision making, which is absolutely critical. That made decision making really easy from the board to the front line of the organization. People were aligned. We were able to make decisions very quickly and get ahead of the competition, if you like. So never a good time to do it, but it's always a good time to do it. So do it now.
Do it now, Mike says. Dave?
Yeah, build on that a little bit. I think when we started ours, I think the most important thing to do is to understand who you really are. So take some time to reflect on your corporate history. Sometimes the answers become fairly clear when you do that. In our particular case, we understood that there were sort of three critical areas that made us different and was our competitive advantage. We have an incredible drive for knowledge and education, so there was a critical need for education. We operate in industries that around the world are part of the challenges that are out there. The real need for energy it's something we live with in Canada. If anybody watched the soccer game last night, it gets cold in parts of Canada. We need to be able to produce energy and to do that in a sustainable way. So we're concerned about the environment. We all have kids and grandkids, and that's the environment and this precious planet is important to us. And then the last thing is that there's going to be an incredible need for innovation. You can't do things the same and expect it to change. So as we reflected on the corporate history, we saw, pictures of that throughout our lifetime. So that became quite interesting. And then this, as I mentioned just a couple of seconds ago, study the challenges that are in the environment. So what are the problems facing the world, and how can you be a meaningful part of that solution? So again, in our case, the environment is a major challenge, and solving those problems is going to take some incredibly bright people. The other one, engage your team. We're a small company. We're less than 100 people. I put it out to the company. I had 12 people that immediately stuck their hands up and said, I want to be part of this. So it's more than a paycheck for people these days. We know that, we hear it. So the more you can find ways to engage people outside of the normal, if you will, work day, then you start to create a company where people want to live and breathe and grow. So I think it's a neat opportunity that the SPI allows. And then the last one is something we fought off very hard. The first meeting, everybody that attends the meeting, they're going to come with your social purpose statement ready to go. They're each going to come in, put one on the desk, and say, "Here it is. Mine's better." So there is a process. The Social Purpose Institute does a phenomenal job of walking you through that process, and the other teammates that you'll be working alongside of will have great ideas that you'll be able to grow from and adopt from. So that would be my 4 key points.
Wow, that's wonderful. I think what stands out to me is definitely make it more than a paycheck, and Social Purpose Institute is certainly doing it right. so that's fantastic. Maybe Bal, over to you.
Yeah, so for us, we undertook our social purpose journey back in 2019. And it was at a time when we were celebrating 25 years in the organization. And so it was a great time to reevaluate where we want to be and 25 years from now. And it was also on the cusp of a lot of environmental change, circular economy, looking at plastic waste in our ocean. And then we had a new leadership join the organization as well. So it kind of it was pretty much the kind of the sweet spot for us to kind of look at, okay, why do we exist as an organization? And I would agree in terms of it's there's never a good time, as Mike said, but it has been the most valuable process for us. Some of the advice I would give, together with what Dave was saying around the Social Purpose Institute and the process they have designed, is very purposeful, and it helps walk you through the process. And what we learned about it was the importance of the stakeholder consultation piece. We spent a lot of time engaging with our stakeholders, including our employees, our existing stakeholders, future stakeholders that we would want to be partnering with, government. Basically, we did over 36 stakeholder interviews, and these are also in person or over the telephone. So it was really important for us, as it provided us with just such an understanding about what makes us different. It also helped identify some low-hanging fruit that we can implement right away, especially within our employee culture, and just by hearing some of the feedback. So I'd say, if I look back at our journey, which started 2 years ago, I'd say the upfront research and ideation part of the social purpose was very beneficial for us. And it really has now proven to provide a platform of really uniting our employees, our stakeholders, around a common vision.
Wow, that's so fantastic. Maybe, Bal, I'll keep you on, because the next question that was asked by Sue is quite relevant to what you just said. So it's what Sue is asking is, what are the best tips for building consensus on your social purpose statement, which is quite relevant to what you said, because you're in the ideation phase, you started early, got a whole bunch of stakeholders together. But of course, it's always a challenge to get stakeholders to agree on a common idea, on a common pathway, because there's always going to be incongruencies in the ideas that are coming through. So would love for you to share any thoughts on Sue's question there. So thank you for the question. And Dave and Mike, if you've got any insights after Val, please feel free to jump in as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's a great question, because consensus can be challenging, especially when you're engaging with such a diverse group of stakeholders. And also, we have a board of directors that we needed to share our social purpose statement with to gain some alignment around it. I think in terms of bringing in, I think that upfront consultation phase is really important. So what we did is we designed these cross-functional employee focus groups, where we asked a series of questions of them in terms of why they joined the company, what made them stay, what's unique about the organization, what's working, what's not working. And that would be kind of a part of the stakeholder group. And then we engage with our existing stakeholders and future stakeholders. And during the entire process, we started pulling some key themes that were coming out of all of our research, essentially. And then we also looked at the UN SDGs that we want to be aligned with. And so I think consensus is really built upon all the intel and the themes you'll see. And even though there was a lot of different stakeholder groups that we engaged with, there were definitely a lot of very consistent and common themes throughout, which helped create that consensus internally and within our board of directors as well.
Thank you for that, Bal. Maybe, Mike, I would love a couple of if you can quickly, 1 minute, brief insights from you on this, because you're in an industry that is really very much client-centric. I mean, all three of you are, but you particularly in the community services, looking at finances. So it's could be. So I mean, when it comes to consensus building, how do you approach that that issue at hand, and how do you get consensus when you've got such a wide quote-unquote stakeholder group to manage?
Yeah, well, I think it's hard work, and perhaps anything worth doing is hard work. But I remember one of the great things about the Social Purpose Institute program around this is the buddy system. So you work as a cohort of organizations, and you get a buddy. And we were lucky enough to have Bal as our buddy. So I remember a conversation early in the process, and we got some really great advice from Bal, who'd been through this process slightly earlier than us, about the extent to which they really reached out to their team Bal just mentioned, they did these focus group sessions with their team to really try to get the buy-in at an early stage. And if you do that, consensus later on becomes a lot easier. So we actually changed, based on that conversation, we actually changed tack and I can actually see, I think Alexa Creelman's in the audience here. So if I could see her, I'd be pointing to her now. And we actually got Alexa Creelman from Central One and the team to come in and do some focus groups with our team, and that really was valuable. So perhaps the lesson for me there was that if you're going to do this, do it properly, invest the time and the money and the resources. There's no shortcuts to this. You're going to have to do the work.
Thank you. Joanne is asking a very pertinent question as well, and maybe Dave, I would like to invite you to sort of share your thoughts on it. So Joanne is asking, who did you bring together to create your social purpose? Now, Dave, you were saying you're a company of about 100 people, and you said everybody, you invite people to share the social purpose, and everybody's going to come in with their own version and saying that's the right version. And so how do you choose? How do you say, these are the people I want to bring together to create the organization's social purpose? What does the process look like? What should be sort of done according to you, and what are some of the things we should be very careful of according to you?
Well, I think the fact is, if you put it out to people and they put up their hand, then they better be a pretty solid candidate that you want to have on the team. You're creating engagement the minute you open the opportunity for them to participate. I guess we were perhaps lucky in two ways. I mean, we're a smaller organization, so by the functions of what we do, it's pretty cross-functional. We had a group of people come in, and it sort of laid itself out. So I didn't really have to go hunting for people, if you will. So I think I was blessed in that way. That made it easier. And then we made sure that we got new input. So people that had been with the company less than a year, we did go out to the entire organization with a survey, actually 2 different surveys, to get input from the entire team. Then we reached out to a number of our key customers to talk to them about what they were doing in the space and what they were doing in this area. I was initially, when I started down this path, and when the company, we started to talk about it, we didn't realize that it was so prevalent throughout our organization. So there's lots of companies that were already well down this path. So it was great for us to see that and be able to support that movement. So I think that was, for us, those are the most critical things. And then the buy-in from your board or your senior leadership is obviously critical. And again, we were lucky enough to have that straight away. So it was good.
Thank you, Dave. Mike, Bal, any thoughts or insights from you to add on to what Dave just said?
Just one thing I would add is testing it. So even when we came up with our draft social purpose statement based on what we heard from all of our stakeholders, we weren't attached to it. And it's important not to be attached to it. I was a bit attached to it at first, but it's important to be open and test it with your buddies, your peer organizations that are part of your cohort, if through the Social Purpose Institute, with stakeholders who provided input into the process. I think it's important because your social purpose is so intentional, and each word has meaning behind it, and also tangible metrics that you can measure against it. So I would just add that one point as well.
That is so critical, not being attached to it, because it is so important to be adaptable to the changing nature of things, for sure. Mike, any final words from you on that question?
No, I know these guys pretty well. I make it a rule not to follow them. They're far more intelligent than me.
Awesome. I'm just looking through the questions, and we've got another super good question from Alexa. And Alexa is asking, were there actions that primed your organizations to be ready for when the swell of momentum hit the tipping point of cascading buy-in for the fuller social purpose undertaking? Which I think all of you have alluded to in some way, where once you open up the idea of, or inviting people to the idea of a social purpose, you do open the floodgates and you do get a lot of interest in. And so any thoughts and advice on how do you prime the organization so that it's ready to be able to manage that swell, that surge well? Maybe Mike, starting with you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. And yeah, I think it's a really important question. When we, luckily, actually, when I went into this, I did get buy-in from the board. That was important because buy-in throughout the organization is really important. But also, we were asking ourselves, and we were asked the question is, well, you're already a credit union, you're already member-owned cooperative, you already do this good stuff. Why do you need to go away and sort of think about your social purpose? Which I think is a fair question. So perhaps the urgency that's mentioned here in the question wasn't felt by some. But what I felt about that was that when you have that attitude, there's a real danger of complacency in your organization. If you already think you're the good guys, if you think you've got all the answers, then we all know that's not true. So actually getting the team and getting all the stakeholders around that idea that we really need to think again and look again and keep working if we want to stay in this place. So that was really the driver for us. But I think the implicit part of that question is it is absolutely essential to get that buy-in, to have that belief that this is something worthwhile doing. Because like I said, this is not something that's going to take a few hours. It's if you want to do it properly, it's hard work. You need to do the work. So you need that buy-in.
Thank you. Dave, I see you've unmuted yourself. Any thoughts to add to that, please?
Yeah, I just, along those same lines, I think the reality is there's two stages. Well, there's many stages, but the two fundamental stages are, first you come up with a statement, then you try and live that statement. And we're in that innovators space now where we're trying to determine all the different ways that we want to do this. We've already actioned a couple of items, but to get it throughout the organization, I would say, we are not in that tipping point. We're not there. We're working at it. So we're doing something right now. Actually, we started a Shark Tank, a social purpose Shark Tank, where a bunch of people in the company have broken down into groups and they're proposing ideas. So we're excited about that. That'll come out next week. We'll sit down and review all the ideas that have come up. So, and from that, then I'm hopeful to get more ideas that we can look at. Okay, how are we going to really live this on a daily basis throughout the organization, not this piece and that piece, but throughout. So.
Super critical. Val, anything to close it off?
Yeah, I would definitely just want to reiterate the importance of leadership buy-in. We were very fortunate. Our CEO has been very supportive and actually was the one that wanted us to engage in this process of defining our social purpose. And so that's really important because you need to be open as an organization in terms of change throughout the organization. And we didn't expect to change our core values. But in the process, it was very clear, especially through our employee focus groups, that our core values weren't relevant to who we are and where we're going. And so there's just been so much change within the organization as a result of going through the process of defining our social purpose. And so I would say definitely be comfortable with change and be open to change. And when you have leadership buy-in, it makes it much easier. And then the other point I would just add is once you have the leadership buy-in, having other parts of the organization own the social purpose as well. And so one of the ways we've done that, we have a cross-functional social purpose implementation team where there's members from each department of the organization. And so they're owning it so that it permeates across all parts of our organization. Because ideally, we want this to become our DNA and where every choice that we make as an organization is consistent with our social purpose.
Yeah, that is so important that it becomes very much a part of your operating system versus a silo. I think that leads again quite nicely into a question that just came through by Sabah, who's asking, who is leading your social impact initiatives within your organizations? Is it usually your sustainability folks? So I think, again, this is quite interesting because I would love to hear from all of you. Is it your sustainability folks, or is it spread fairly large and wide across the organizations and it's almost like an organizational effort at this point? Maybe, Val, we can start with you.
Sure. Yeah, it actually, I've been leading our social purpose. I'm in communications and stakeholder relations. I started with the organization 2.5 years ago, and that was part of the initiative I was leading. So it was easy for me to invest a lot of time into it up front, just given it was part of my mandate when I joined the organization. And what I'll say is, it's, as you know, the years gone by, or 2 years have gone by, it's important that ownership be shared. And so it's owned by myself and our CEO, I should say. And so, but as I was mentioning, we have a social purpose implementation team who we're activating as ambassadors, and then they are owning it as part of their department and function. And so it's kind of trickling down into other parts of the organization.
Amazing. So really, shared ownership is the message I'm hearing from Val. Mike, Dave, anything to add to that, or does that resonate quite strongly with you as well?
Yeah, I don't mind chipping in. Yeah, we've got, in terms of leadership, we've got 2 members of the leadership team, one from the sort of people and culture side of the organization who deal with a lot of things like sustainability or our volunteering and our community involvement, but also one of our SVPs on the business side. So we wanted to make sure that we had the sort of the business buy-in. Dave spoke about that earlier, about implementation and integrating it into the business. So that was really important. But really, you want everyone to be involved, but that senior involvement and that senior drive is very important, we found.
Absolutely.
I'll simply say I agree with the other 2.
That's easy. Done and done. We've got about 7 minutes, I think, that we've got left. But I've got a couple of more questions. One question that I have, and I think you've said it quite often, all of you, that it's quite important in this journey to get the leadership buy-in. If you do have leadership buy-in, it makes the process that much more easier and that much more achievable. But I'm in, let's say, for example, I'm in a firm, I'm a, mid-manager, senior manager. How is it that I go about getting that buy-in? What are some of the things you've seen that makes the process easier if I'm not in leadership and I'm not the one initiating the sustainability or social purpose initiatives?
Yeah, I don't mind having a go at that, Shiv. So yeah, I think one of the points that we realized very early is that developing a social purpose and living a social purpose isn't and shouldn't be a drag on the organization. This shouldn't be simply a cost center. It should actually be. I talked before about how I felt it was a competitive advantage for us sometimes. You can certainly have a profit motive whilst also being a social purpose organization. And so I think if you were someone in your organization and you were passionate about this and you're trying to convince someone upstairs, so to speak, about why you should do this, I think really coming in and talking about the business advantages of this, about how this can uniquely position you against your competitors and within the market, how it can lead to clearer decision making, how it can contribute to the culture of the organization. All of these things will matter to whoever's running the organization, and should get their ear. This isn't just about a logo or a slogan or looking good. This is about fundamentally how you drive business decisions in your organization, which senior people should be interested in that.
Dave,
yeah, I would agree with what Mike said there, and the reality is that maybe your values don't align with the organization in which you're employed, and that's a very real question that everybody should be asking themselves always. I think that's what makes great organizations, is when you get alignment from front door to back door. Then I think you've really got something that could be incredibly powerful. So, but I think anybody that doesn't see this as a critical piece of their business is naive or ill-informed that things are going to stay the way they are. So I don't think you get much pushback, like you say. It's important to understand part of the benefit of a social purpose done well, I think, is that it can bring profit to an organization, and in fact, it must, if you're to continue to sustain and grow it. So I think that's a benefit that any business leader would be interested in.
Absolutely. So if you are in a position where your leadership is not giving or taking the buy-in, I think direct them to Dave and he's going to set them straight, is the message that I'm hearing here. That's super. So I think I've just been told by our tech experts that we're running a bit late. Actually, I apologize. I thought it was still 12:40, but we are about 5 minutes late already. So I think we'll have to start wrapping up the discussion, although there are many other questions and we could go on for another hour easily. but really want to sort of wrap this up by really 20 seconds from each of you, and then we say our goodbyes. Is, you know, if there was one thing you would do differently when you started your journey, what would that be? 20 seconds, one line, please. We can start with Dave.
Engage your buddy early. You will get stuck. No questions about it. You're going to get stuck because it's new. Engage your buddy and the Social Purpose Institute, and it makes it a whole lot easier.
Amazing. Thank you. Mike, over to you. Quick and sharp.
Yeah, I guess just one thing is, as you're going through this, good luck everyone on this journey, by the way, but you know, as you're going through this, don't take the easy routes, do the hard work, and you're going to get the results when you come out on the end.
Fab. Val?
I would say, yeah, I definitely lean on your peer companies, other experts, and be open and listen.
Amazing. Thank you so much. With that, I would like to wrap it up. To all the audience, thank you very much for attending.